Pride, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, wrath and sloth. Each of these sins has a story, a lesson that reveals the darker side of human nature and the consequences that follow when our desires spiral out of control. Now, imagine this. A powerful king stands on the edge of his palace roof, gazing out over his kingdom. He feels invincible, adored by all. Then he looks down and sees a woman naked and bathing. She is beautiful, her body shining in the moonlight. He is the king, after all, and in his mind, he can have anything he desires. This single lustful sighting ignites a fire within him, setting off a chain of events filled with betrayal, heartache, and tragedy. So, my dear viewer, buckle up, because this is just the beginning. You are watching the Tales of the Savannah. Subscribe and be part of the tribe. Now let's get back to the story. "Who is she?" he called to a nearby servant, pointing at the enchanting woman below. "Her name is Bathsheba," the servant replied. "She is the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite." David heard that she was married, but chose to ignore it. With a wave of his hand, he commanded, "Go and bring her to me." When Bathsheba arrived, she looked troubled. "My king," she pleaded, "I am married. We cannot do this." But David, filled with his own desires, replied, "I am your king. You must obey me." Then the Bible says, "She came to him, and he slept with her." You might think the story would end there, but it takes a darker turn. Weeks later, Bathsheba sent word to David that would change everything. "I'm pregnant." Panic filled David as he paced the grand balcony where he had first seen Bathsheba. Her husband Uriah was away, bravely fighting in a war that David had sent him to. Desperate, David quickly sent a message to his commander, Joab, "Send me Uriah the Hittite." Uriah rode back to the city, puzzled by the sudden call from the king. After they exchanged pleasantries, David said, "Go home and wash your feet." David was trying to coax Uriah into spending the night with Bathsheba, hoping to disguise the source of her pregnancy. But Uriah, a man of honor, refused. "How could I go to my house to eat and drink and lie with my wife?" he asked. His fellow soldiers were camped in the fields, and he refused to indulge while they sacrificed. Uriah's words stung. This was a man whose loyalty shamed the king's own actions. David tried again, making Uriah drink, hoping that his principles would weaken in a drunken haze. But Uriah, even in his stupor, remained loyal, choosing to sleep among the king's servants instead of returning home. David's plan to cover his sin had failed. Desperate, he wrote a letter, sealing Uriah's fate with his own hand. He sent Uriah back to the battlefield, carrying a message to Joab, his commander. "Put Uriah in the front where the fighting is fiercest. Then pull back, so he will be struck down." Joab, bound to obey, placed Uriah in the thick of battle. The attack was brutal, and soon Uriah lay dead among the fallen. When the message reached David, there was no grief, no hesitation. David received the news with chilling indifference, saying, "Don't let this upset you. The sword devours one as well as another." With a few words, he dismissed Uriah's death and moved forward with his plan. Bathsheba mourned her husband's loss, but her grief period passed, and David brought her into his home as his wife. Such is the way of lust and the consequences it brings if left unchecked. As we journey through the 7 deadly sins, we now come to gluttony, a sin of excess that can consume not just the individual, but entire communities. This sin is not just about overeating. It represents a craving for excess, a hunger that never truly satisfies. It's the idea that more is always better, but sometimes that desire can lead to destruction. Here is a story for you. In ancient times, there were 2 cities known as Sodom and Gomorrah. These cities were filled with people who indulged in every pleasure, seeking more and more without any thought of consequence. They feasted, drank, and lived for their own desires, ignoring the needs of others around them. One night, 2 angels arrived at the city of Sodom. Lot, a good man living in a wicked city, was sitting at the gateway, alert to the danger that surrounded him. When he saw the angels, he got up to meet them. "My lords," he said urgently, "please turn aside to your servant's house. You can wash your feet and spend the night, and then go on your way early in the morning." "No," they answered firmly, "we will spend the night in the square." But Lot insisted strongly. Finally, they agreed and entered his house. Before they had gone to bed, chaos erupted. All the men from every part of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded Lot's house, their voices a menacing chorus. "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we can sleep with them," they shouted. Gluttony evident in their words. Lot stepped outside, shutting the door behind him, and faced the mob. "No, my friends. Don't do this wicked thing," he pleaded. "Look, I have 2 daughters who have never slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do what you like with them, but don't do anything to these men, for they have come under the protection of my roof." "Get out of our way," they shouted. "This fellow came here as a foreigner, and now he wants to play the judge. We'll treat you worse than them." The pressure mounted as they pressed against him, threatening to break down the door. But the angels inside acted swiftly. They reached out, pulling Lot back into the house and shutting the door behind him. Then, in a display of divine power, they struck the men at the door with blindness, leaving them stumbling in confusion, unable to find the entrance. "Do you have anyone else here? Sons-in-law, sons or daughters, or anyone else in the city who belongs to you? Get them out of here," the angels urged Lot, their voices filled with urgency. "We are going to destroy this place." Lot rushed to find his sons-in-law, but they laughed at his warnings, thinking he was joking. As dawn approached, the angels insisted, "Hurry, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, or you will be swept away when the city is punished." Lot hesitated, caught in the chaos of his life, but the angels grasped his hand and those of his family, leading them safely out of the city. "Flee for your lives. Don't look back, and don't stop anywhere in the plain," they commanded. "Flee to the mountains or you will be swept away." Lot raced toward a town called Zoar, and as soon as he arrived, the sun began to rise over the land. But the calm was short-lived. The heavens opened, and the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah. The cities were destroyed, the entire plain laid waste, and all the inhabitants perished, consumed by their own excess. But as they fled, Lot's wife looked back at the destruction, unable to tear herself away from the life they were leaving behind. In that moment, she was turned into a pillar of salt, a chilling reminder of the gluttony and wickedness that had consumed Sodom. As we reflect on this story, let us remember the importance of moderation and the dangers of letting our cravings control us. True fulfillment comes not from excess, but from finding balance and understanding our place in the world. As we journey deeper into the 7 deadly sins, we come to envy, a feeling that can twist our hearts and lead us down a dark path. Envy is the desire for what others have, and it can drive us to make terrible choices. Well, I promised a story for each sin, and here it is. In the beginning there were 2 brothers, Cain and Abel. They were the sons of Adam and Eve, each with their own gifts and skills. Cain was a hard-working farmer, toiling in the fields to grow his crops. Abel, on the other hand, was a shepherd, caring for his flock of sheep. While they lived a simple life, a fierce competition began to brew between them. One day the brothers decided to offer gifts to God. Abel took great care in preparing his offering, giving God the best of what he had. He chose the firstborn lambs from his flock and included their fat portions, presenting them with faith and trust that God would reward him for his devotion. Cain, however, offered a less than appealing gift made from his produce. It wasn't the best of his harvest, and it lacked the same heartfelt intention as Abel's sacrifice. Some say it was not just the quality of the offering that mattered, but Cain's impure heart and lack of humility. When God accepted Abel's offering but rejected Cain's, a storm of jealousy brewed inside him. Instead of reflecting on why his gift was not accepted, Cain let anger take control. The resentment he felt toward Abel began to cloud his judgment, darkening his heart. One night after the rejection weighed heavily on his mind, Cain confronted Abel. "Why does God favor you?" he hissed, jealousy twisting his words. Abel, surprised by his brother's anger, tried to explain. "I gave my best to God. It's about faith, Cain. We must trust him." But Cain's heart was already too consumed by envy to listen. Instead of responding with humility, he became even angrier, letting his rage spiral out of control. In a shocking moment of desperation, he lured Abel into the fields. As they walked among the crops, Cain's heart raced, not with excitement, but with a dark intent. In a flash of madness, Cain struck his brother down, ending his life in a fit of rage. God soon called out to Cain, asking,
"Where is your brother Abel?"
Fear surged through Cain. "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" he lied, his heart pounding in his chest.
"What have you done? Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground."
Then God pronounced a curse upon him. He would wander the earth as a restless fugitive, forever marked by his crime. The story of Cain and Abel serves as a powerful warning about the dangers of envy. It reminds us that jealousy can cloud our judgment and lead us to act against our own interests. Instead of succumbing to envy, we should celebrate the successes of others and find contentment in our own lives. We've shared the full story of Cain and Abel on this channel, called My Brother's Keeper, and the story of Adam and Eve, titled The Forbidden Knowledge. Be sure to check them out. They offer a fresh perspective on these classic tales. As we continue our exploration of the 7 deadly sins, we arrive at greed. Greed is an overwhelming desire for more money, more power, more possessions. The story of Judas Iscariot is a tale of how greed can destroy trust and relationships. Judas was one of the 12 disciples chosen by Jesus. He walked with Jesus, witnessed miracles, and heard his teachings. But beneath Judas's calm exterior lay a heart consumed by greed. He had been entrusted with the group's funds, but he often took a little for himself. Each coin he pocketed fed his greed, and he began to dream of what he could have if he only had more. One night the chief priests gathered in secret, plotting against Jesus. They were desperate to silence him, and they knew that Judas could help them. When Judas approached them, his eyes glinted with greed. "What will you give me if I hand him over to you?" he asked, a sly grin spreading across his face. "We will give you 30 pieces of silver," they replied, their voices filled with excitement. "Deal," Judas said. He could already imagine the riches he would acquire and the life he could lead if he accepted their offer. As Jesus continued to teach and heal, Judas wore a mask of loyalty, hiding his true intentions. On the night of the Last Supper, as they gathered around the table, Jesus sensed the storm brewing within Judas. "One of you will betray me," he said, sadness in his eyes. The room fell silent. "Who could it be?" whispered Thomas, looking around nervously. "He that dippeth his hand with me in the dish, the same shall betray me," Jesus replied. "Is it me, Rabbi?" Judas asked, feigning innocence, though guilt clawed at him. "It is as you say," Jesus replied gently, knowing what was to come. Judas stood up from the table, walking into the darkness of the night. He made his way to the chief priests, ready to seal his fate. "I have come to fulfill my part of the bargain," he said. "Lead us to him," the priest commanded. That night, Judas led a band of soldiers to the garden where Jesus prayed. As they approached, he stepped forward, ready to kiss Jesus on the cheek, a signal to the guards. "Greetings, Rabbi," he said. Jesus looked at him, pain in his eyes. "Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?" The deed was done, but in a frantic rush, Judas returned to the temple, the 30 pieces of silver clinking loudly in his pocket, each sound deepening his regret. He burst into the chamber where the chief priests were gathered, desperate. "I have betrayed innocent blood," he cried, throwing the coins onto the ground. The priests looked at him with cold indifference. "What is that to us? That's your problem now," they sneered, dismissing him. Overwhelmed by remorse and shame, Judas stumbled out into the darkness. He found a secluded spot and fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face as he grappled with the horror of what he had done. Driven by guilt, he took his own life in a final act of desperation, leaving behind a legacy of greed and betrayal. Later, the priests used the blood money to buy a potter's field, a grim reminder of the price of betrayal. His story stands as a haunting tale of the destructive power of greed and the lasting consequences it brings. As we explore the 7 deadly sins, we come to sloth, the sin of laziness and inaction. It can keep us from fulfilling our potential and lead to missed opportunities. Jesus told a powerful parable about sloth that serves as a warning for us all. Once upon a time, a wealthy master decided to go on a long journey. Before he left, he called his 3 servants together and entrusted them with his wealth. "I am giving each of you some talents," he said. "Invest them wisely while I am gone. Use them to grow what I have given you." To the first servant he gave 5 talents, to the second he gave 2, and to the third he handed 1 talent. "Now, I expect great things from you," the master declared before leaving. The first servant wasted no time. He took the 5 talents and immediately went to work, investing them carefully. He traded and worked hard, and soon he had doubled his master's money. The second servant also got to work, using his 2 talents wisely, and he too was able to double his investment. But the third servant, filled with fear and laziness, buried his talent in the ground. "What if I lose it?" he thought. "It's safer this way." He shrugged off the responsibility, choosing to do nothing while the others worked hard to grow their fortunes. Time passed, and finally the master returned. He called his servants before him, eager to see what they had accomplished. The first servant approached confidently, saying, "Master, you entrusted me with 5 talents. Look, I have gained 5 more." "Excellent," the master replied, a proud smile spreading across his face. "You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share in your master's happiness." The second servant stepped forward, proud of his efforts. "Master, you gave me 2 talents. I have gained 2 more." "Great job," the master said, his eyes shining with joy. "You too have been faithful. Come and share in your master's happiness." Finally, it was the third servant's turn. He shuffled forward, avoiding the master's eyes. "Master," he said, his voice trembling, "I knew you were a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown. So I was afraid, and hid your talent in the ground. Here, take what is yours." He handed over the 1 talent, covered in dirt. The master's expression darkened as he listened to the servant's words. "You lazy and wicked servant," he exclaimed. "You could have at least put my money in the bank to earn interest. You did nothing while others worked hard. Because of your sloth, you have lost what you were given." With a wave of his hand, the master ordered, "Take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10. For whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. But whoever does not have, even what they think they have will be taken from them." The third servant stood frozen in shock. He had let fear and laziness keep him from taking action, and now he faced the consequences of his choices. The master turned away, leaving the lazy servant alone in his shame. The story of the talents serves as a powerful reminder that sloth can rob us of our potential and opportunities. As we reflect on this tale, let it inspire us to take action and make the most of what we have been given. We are called to invest in ourselves and our gifts, rather than bury them in the ground. The parable of the talents teaches us that our choices matter, and we must strive to live with purpose and diligence. As we dive into the sin of wrath, we find ourselves in the midst of an explosive moment in the story of Moses and the Israelites. Wrath is a powerful emotion, one that can lead to devastating consequences. The tale of Moses breaking the tablets of the 10 Commandments is a gripping account of anger unleashed. So the story goes. After leading the Israelites out of Egypt, Moses climbed Mount Sinai to receive God's commandments. For days, he remained on the mountain, communing with God and receiving instructions for his people. But down below, the Israelites grew restless. When the people saw that Moses was taking too long to return, they gathered around Aaron, Moses' brother and spokesperson. "Come, make us gods who will go before us," they demanded. "As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him." Fearful of losing his leadership, Aaron felt the pressure of the crowd's demands. "Take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons, and your daughters are wearing, and bring them to me," he instructed, trying to calm them. The people complied, stripping off their gold jewelry and handing it over. With the shiny gold in hand, Aaron melted it down and crafted it into an idol, a golden calf. When he finished, the people erupted with joy. "These are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt," they shouted, their hearts swelling with misplaced adoration. Seeing this, Aaron built an altar in front of the calf and announced, "Tomorrow there will be a festival to the Lord." The next day, the people rose early, filled with excitement. They sacrificed burnt offerings and presented fellowship offerings. But the celebration soon spiraled out of control. They sat down to eat and drink, indulging in revelry that turned wild and chaotic, their focus shifting entirely from God to their newly created idol. Meanwhile, on the mountain, God watched the scene unfold. He turned to Moses, who was still receiving the commandments.
"Go down, for your people, whom you brought up out of Egypt, have become corrupt. They have turned away from the path I commanded them and have made themselves an idol."
Moses' heart sank as he heard the news. Anger surged through him. What have they done? He thought, his mind racing as he descended the mountain with the 2 stone tablets, engraved with the commandments of God. As Moses approached the camp, he heard the sounds of celebration, laughter mixed with shouts and music. When he saw the golden calf and the people dancing around it, his blood boiled. Wrath clouded his vision, and in a fit of rage he threw down the tablets, shattering them at the foot of the mountain. The precious words of God lay broken in the dust, a testament to the people's rebellion and his own fury. Moses marched straight to Aaron, his voice thunderous. "What have you done? How could you lead these people into such sin?" Aaron, trembling under Moses' gaze, stammered, "I was afraid of the people. They said, 'Make us gods.' So I took their gold and cast it into the fire. And out came this calf." Moses shook his head in disbelief. With his wrath boiling over, he shouted, "Whoever is for the Lord, come to me." The Levites rallied to his side, ready to take action. Moses commanded them to go through the camp and strike down those who had led the rebellion. That day, 3,000 were lost, victims of Moses' wrath. This story serves as a powerful reminder of how unchecked anger can lead to devastating outcomes, affecting not only ourselves but those around us. As we reflect on this moment, let it remind us to manage our emotions wisely. Wrath may be a natural response, but it can lead us to make choices we will regret. Instead, we should strive for understanding, patience, and compassion, seeking to build rather than destroy. As we conclude our exploration of the 7 deadly sins, we arrive at pride, the sin that leads to the downfall of even the mightiest beings. The story of Lucifer, once the brightest angel in heaven, serves as a cautionary tale about the destructive nature of pride. In the kingdom of heaven among the angels, one stood out above all others. His name was Lucifer, meaning light bearer. He was created as a magnificent being, adorned with beauty and wisdom. He served as a powerful archangel, overseeing the music of heaven and leading the other angels in worship. Lucifer's voice was like no other, rich and melodic, filling the halls of heaven with praise. He was admired and respected, and for a time, he basked in the glory of his position. However, as time passed, something began to change within him. The admiration he received from the other angels slowly morphed into something darker. "Why should I not be worshipped like God?" Lucifer pondered, his thoughts growing more dangerous with each passing moment. He started to believe he deserved more than he had been given. The radiance of his beauty and his musical gifts turned into a breeding ground for pride. "I will ascend to the heavens. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the Mount of Assembly, on the utmost heights of Mount Zaphon. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High," he declared to himself. Lucifer convinced a third of the angels to join him in his rebellion, appealing to their vanity and desire for greatness. "Why should we serve when we could rule?" he challenged them. Many angels, swayed by his beauty and charisma, began to see his point of view and became enamored with the idea of sharing in Lucifer's ambition. Together they plotted against God, believing they could usurp his authority and take their place on the throne of heaven. The heavens trembled as the loyal angels watched in horror at the unfolding insurrection. God, knowing the hearts of his creations, was not blind to the rebellion brewing. In his divine wisdom, he summoned Lucifer and the fallen angels to account for their actions. The clash between pride and divine authority erupted into a fierce battle. Angels loyal to God clashed with the rebellious forces led by Lucifer, and in the end, God's power prevailed. With a commanding word, God cast Lucifer and his followers out of heaven, banishing them to the depths of darkness. Thus, Lucifer fell from grace, transformed into Satan, the adversary. The story of Lucifer serves as a powerful reminder of the dangers of pride, illustrating that even the most beautiful and talented beings can fall when they allow pride to take root in their hearts. Now I want to know, what is your deadly sin? Did you see it in the stories we just explored? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, thank you for watching our story, and we hope you enjoyed it. What lessons did you draw from this story? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and be part of the tribe. Thank you for watching The Tales of the Savannah. We will see you next time in the Savannah.